So today we're going to look at a Moog style bass in analog on Ableton, how to create it. I've got a few things installed here already. I've got an implementation of analog, I've got a spectrum analyzer to look what we're doing, and I've also got an oscilloscope that allows us to see the different sounds and waveforms. So when it says it's an oscillator that has a sawtooth shape, we can confirm that over here. What we're going to use is dual oscillators for this. We're going to use dual. And we're going to do a few things. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the amplitude here. And I'm going to use this to control the different volume of... I'm going to use this to control the attack of everything. And the attack, sustain, the attack, the decay, the sustain, and the release. I want to take the release right down. And we're still nowhere near our bass sound, but I've got it nice and choppy, which is the way I want it to sound right now. Next thing I'm going to do is detune the two oscillators very slightly. I'll show you it in an extreme way. It starts phasing it a little bit introduced, and then as you increase it too much, you get that authentic 80s or 60s movie sci-fi sound effect, probably created with a Moog. So I'm going to detune it ever so slightly, a few cents, and I'm going to do the same with the other oscillator, but I'm also going to grab this oscillator here and I'm going to drop it down an octave. The great thing in this one, we get a little bit more bang for your buck, and we get the ability to add another oscillator, a sub-oscillator below, and so you can see as I bring this up, each oscillator has this. Another oscillator beneath, which just fattens it up. I'm going to do the same, bring this one up by selecting the shell for oscillator 2. And you can see quite nicely illustrated here the phasing, sort of flanging sound that this detuning of the oscillators has created. If I delete that, you'll see that waveform stays static, but as I add a little bit of detuning to it, the intervals between these sawteeth changes and modulates over time. So it's great. It's giving a little bit more interest. The next thing to get this, it's really all about the filter. I'm going to do that, but before I get onto the filter, I'm going to add unison. I'm going to click on this shell here for the volume. I'm going to turn the voices down to a mono synthesizer, which is the way all those mono synths were, only playing one voice at a time, the old synthesizers. So no matter how many notes I put at a time, I'll only get one. The unison I'm going to use here, and what this does is again create slight detuning of that's 4 voices, 2 voices a little bit more subtle. And again, you can see in the oscilloscope here, the waveforms are moving along there due to these extra voices. I'm going to try 4 voices and see how we go. Even more complex. A little bit goes a long way with this particular parameter. Next one I'm going to use is the frequency of the filter, and this is really what it's about. I've set it to low pass 24, so it's quite a resonant free filter with a steep cutoff. I'm going to bring it down, but what gives it that sound that we all know from the fat analog, the Moogs, is having it. Having this filter modulated by an envelope follower. What this means is that it's taking a period of time to get from a very low point to this point here of 640. So there we've got 8 seconds, but I can change that such that the decay is the amount of time that it takes to drop down to this level here. And that's our sustain. You can hear it goes up and then whizzes straight back down, so to speak. I want this to get up to its point and stay there, so doesn't matter what I do with the decay now, the decay and the sustain are up at that unity level, so it's going to stay once it gets up there. Maybe just the... And then there you have it. It's not a bad emulation of an old synth. One of the things that is important in this sound is the detune, and also the detune that I've created here a little bit, because the old oscillators were a little bit unstable on the old synthesizers. They weren't as perfect as these digital oscillators you get in an instrument like analog. Whilst it is an emulation of an analog, it can play 2 oscillators, as you can see here, perfectly in tune and in time. Detune it a little bit. Add some more detune here with the unison. Some more voices. Becomes a lot fatter. And we got that filter. You can go through and add some of these parameters here to your macros. Resonance in this guy here. And then you can use a controller or your mouse and keyboard, but it's obviously ideal to get some kind of knob that allows you to do these, move them around. You might even get that attack there for your frequency. One last thing I might experiment with quickly is some noise. Which just makes the filter a little bit easier to hear. I'm not sure if it's working all that well, so we'll see. Not too bad. The last thing I'm going to do is just play with the glide time over here. And this means that if I hold a note down, we get a glide between it. With legato on, it's only if I hold a note and then I hit another one. But with legato on, it happens with every note, this gliding between notes. So probably more flexible there. As I hit a note and hold it and then hit another note, I'm going to get the glide. And I'm going to map that glide time to another parameter there. And I've got a nice little rack that allows me to have a great Moog sound. I'm going to have a look. There's some drive there. There is some distortion on that filter. You'll notice here that the filter, this drive setting, you can have it more extreme. Or turn it off altogether. I think that could be another good culprit for one of our macros. An ability, you now have the ability to introduce some distortion into that filter. One thing I will say, if you are turning the filter envelope on here and you're not hearing anything happen to the sound, you have to change this parameter here. It's by default, it's set at 4. Depending on how what your default setting is in analog, it may or may not make any sound. If it's set to 0, it won't make any effect. The envelope doesn't affect the sound at all. As I bring it up, it goes from affecting the sound a little bit to really having a dramatic effect on the sound. And I'll show you there if I increase that envelope here with my macro. Or my frequency down a little bit. And you've got a pretty crazy filter. So maybe that envelope there could be mapped to another macro. Sorry, I'll do it to 6 and just call this envelope. And that adjusts how violent you can have it go in both directions, which I don't want. So I'm actually going to 0 that. I'm going to click this, open up the browser, and change by clicking map. I'm going to change that envelope so it goes from 0, no effect on the sound, rather than a negative effect on the sound, to a considerable effect on the sound, and you'll hear it here. There you have it, a quick and ugly Moog sound, so enjoy.